Shana Tova, everyone. I'm going to ask you to take your seats. We're going to begin. Today is 5785, but it is also 5784 Simchat Torah, October 7th. It has been a year and so much has occurred, and at the same time, we are forever in the terrible day of October 7th. I don't know any other way to move forward than to talk about what this year has wrought on all of us. And I don't know how to do it in a way as clarifying as through the words of the prophet of this year, Rachel Goldberg Polin. Her presence, her clarion call to humanity, her raw emotion, her religious values, her ability to speak across every border and boundary, held and pushed so many of us this year to do more, to be more, to feel, to cry, to demand more from our leaders. This sermon is an homage to Rachel, told in 3 parts. My hope is that these 3 parts, gratitude, a ritual for pain, and unrealized redemption, can help us, even in this dark moment, to find wells of life and strength we didn't know we possessed, whether about this conflict or, quite frankly, about any other part of our lives. Part 1. Gratitude. She stood up, slight, maybe 5 foot tall, but fierce in stature, tortured, broken, exhausted. The masking tape that we have come to know these last 11 months, where she counted each day with a black Sharpie placed over her heart, was now accompanied by a tear down the front of her white cotton shirt. Her son, her only son, whom she loved fiercely, and for whom she fought fiercely for 11 months to be returned home, had been brutally murdered in a tunnel in Gaza. The world was watching and listening to her, as we had all been doing for the past 11 months since October 7th, because we now knew that a prophet named Rachel Goldberg Polin was amongst us. Day 332, the eulogy. Here is how she started. I have had a lot of time during these past 332 days to think about my sweet boy Hirsch, and one thing I keep thinking about is how out of all the mothers in the whole entire world, God chose to give Hirsch to me. What must I have done in a past life to deserve such a beautiful gift? It must have been glorious. I am honest and I say it's not that Hirsch was perfect, but he was the perfect son for me. And I am so grateful to God, and I want to do Hakarat Tov and thank God right now in front of all of you for giving me this magnificent present of my Hirsch. For 23 years, I was privileged to have the most stunning honor to be Hirsch's mama. I'll take it and say thank you. I sat in tears, stunned. Whatever she would have opened with, we would have received. Fury, rage, heartbreak, but no. Having been tortured for 11 brutal months, 47 intolerable weeks, 329 unrelenting days, 478,080 torturous minutes, and she opened her eulogy with gratitude to God, gifting her Hirsch as her child. To turn to gratitude under such torturous pain was stunning. To have birthed a child into the world, raised him intentionally to love, to give, to explore, and to have him taken so violently, first from his homeland and then from this earth, and to turn to gratitude for this gift of his life. That is the embodiment of what for most of us will only ever be a religious aspiration. I don't mean to suggest that when terrible things happen that we should not feel a whole range of emotions, and I am quite sure that along with the gratitude Rachel expressed, she stood there with shock and rage, eternal sadness, and the feeling that this death never should have happened, anger at the world and at our leaders, and maybe God too. But in the mix of all of that, she was able to identify gratitude. And it was how Rachel decided to begin this eulogy, and there is something profound about approaching life in this way. She was a teacher once again for all of us, not because she wanted to be, but because the moment required it of her. She taught that no matter the circumstance of Hirsch's death, no one was going to take away her ability to feel gratitude for Hirsch's life, for her son, or to stop her from celebrating the wonderful human that was Hirsch. In the 4th chapter of Pirkei Avot, Ben Zoma teaches, Ezehu Ashir, who is rich? She who is happy with her lot. Rabbi Tamar Elad Applebaum suggests that this teaching that begins the 4th chapter of Avot is like a prayer, an aspiration, and pushes on each one of us to strive for personal growth. Who is rich? The one who teaches herself to be satisfied with what she has been given. What could our lives look like if we could stop regularly and give hakarat tov, gratitude, for the gift of our lives, even in the most darkest, most torturous moments, for being here, for loving, for feeling so connected to the world that the pain of loss will feel at moments unbearable. What might happen to our individual and collective dispositions if we truly lived with gratitude? Gratitude is not an answer to grief. It won't quell it. It's a disposition that one chooses to cultivate to meet the world while being very aware of mortality and the inability to always control what happens to us. It doesn't deny humanity's cruelty or trauma, but it is a wellspring that can live alongside dark truths. Part 2, a ritual for pain. Day 18. Rachel. Here I live in a different universe than all of you. You are all right there. We seem like we live in the same place. But I, like all the mothers and the fathers and the wives and the husbands and the children and brothers and sisters and loved ones of the stolen, we all actually live on a different planet. And the very cruelest of questions that each of us is asked every single day without intended malice is, how are you? Well, she said, picture your own mother. And then picture her being told that there are only 2 options. You are either dead or you have had your arm blown off and you were kidnapped by gunpoint into Gaza and no one knows where you are or if you bled to death in that pickup truck 18 days ago. Or if you died yesterday or 5 minutes ago. That is my answer to you. That is how all of us here on our planet feel, this planet of beyond pain, our planet of no sleep, our planet of despair, our planet of tears. Most of us, thank God, we will never know the pain and wrenching anguish of John and Rachel. And yet all the way across the world, across a gulf of pain, we held on to hope. Through Hirsch's 329 days in captivity, so many of us wrote to the White House, spoke with officials in the administration, pushed for a deal, marched, protested outside the Red Cross, prayed, cried, even ordered drinks at Starbucks using the name Hirsch, so his name would be called out and not forgotten. so that the piercing pain of Rachel and John would not be forgotten. The pain of all the hostage families that still wait, it's unbearable. And yet, this is the world we are living in. This year was unbearable. The brutality of October 7th, the murder of 1,200 people in Israel, the brutal nature of these murders, children, pregnant women, the rape and ravaging of bodies and homes, peace lovers at the Nova Festival, murdered, mutilated, and carried off to Gaza, and then a country at war. And the waiting, the endless waiting to not know whether a family member who was missing was taken as a hostage or murdered. The revelation of deaths through the discovery of body parts was re-traumatization, sometimes daily, and then the funerals. I will never forget the image of 5 bodies lined up for burial, wrapped in the flag of Israel. An entire family, Aviv, Livnat, Rotem, Yonatan, and Yiftach Chotz of Kfar Aza, who were found huddled on a bed in their home, where terrorists murdered them. The violence was almost too severe to even believe until the pictures, the testimonies, the videos, the eyewitness accounts told us that a modern pogrom on Israel's soil had befallen our people. Across the world this year, anti-Semitism was unleashed from college campus protests that targeted Jewish students not only with words but with violence, to increased incidents of anti-Semitism across the world, physical assault, vandalism, and verbal assault. My family and I even were victim of one of these verbal assaults on our way home from shul one night, all while a war raged on. Thousands of Palestinians dead, children buried in rubble, hospitals overfull with no equipment and no medicine, near famine for children and families in Gaza, and the Palestinian father I will also never forget, Mohammed Abu al-Qumsan, who, while on his way to register his newborn twins' births, a strike killed them both, as well as his wife and mother-in-law. The 33-year-old new father had just left the hospital in Deir al-Bala, central Gaza, when he received a call telling him to return to the hospital. He lost his entire world. Sometimes you can just say it's too much. This year has been too much. The pain is more than we can hold. The suffering is greater than we could ever have imagined, and the war is not over. Maimonides teaches that the shofar is a wake-up call. In the Mishnah Torah, he writes, "Af al pi shetkiyat shofar b'Rosh Hashanah gzerat hakatuv remez yesh bo klomar uru yushenim." Even though the blowing of the shofar is a biblical decree, it hints at something that calls to us, wake up, sleepers, from your sleep, and slumberers, arise from your slumber. Search your ways and return in tshuva, and remember your Creator. This year, for the first time in my life, this teaching doesn't work for me. We're awake. We've been awake, on edge, shaken to our cores. This year, the shofar sounds more like wailing to me. A ritual that captures the utter sorrow, the pain, and unimaginable loss of this year. The rabbis of the 8th century knew pain like ours. In the Midrashic compilation Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, the rabbis teach that the shofar sound was likened to the wailing of Sarah after the Akedah. The story goes that when Abraham took Isaac up to Mount Moriah and almost sacrificed him, Satan came, and he whispered to Sarah and told her that Abraham had indeed sacrificed her only son, the one she loved. Sarah began to weep and cry aloud 3 times, 3 howlings corresponding to the 3 disconnected short notes of the shofar, and her soul fled, and she died. This year, the sound of the shofar takes on new meaning. It isn't only a biblical decree. It isn't only the call to wake up. It isn't only the cry of Sarah. It's the cry of Rachel Goldberg, Poland. It's the cry of all the mothers and the fathers and the children and the grandparents and the uncles and the aunts and the Jews and the Palestinians everywhere for the deep pain we are feeling. This year, the shofar is us, people wailing. The shofar is a representation of the wordless anguish that hovers over us and in us. Anguish that we can't turn away from. Anguish that we can't close from our ears or our hearts. But it is also our teacher. That ancient sound, the sound of the shofar, is a reminder of the ram in the thicket that took the place of the sacrifice of Isaac. What if this year the shofar is a call to us from thousands of years ago, asking us to find another way forward, to end the sacrificing of our children and to cling to life? Part 3, unfulfilled redemption. Every week, I get up in front of this congregation, as do Aaron and Sarah, and we say to you right before Mi Chamocha, this is a prayer, this is a tefillah that we sing every day of the week, and it is about redemption. We remember the great redemption of our people from Egypt, when the people were running out of Egypt and Pharaoh's army was chasing them from behind and they came to the sea. They didn't see a path forward, and then suddenly Moses' staff hit the sea and the sea split, creating the dry ground, the path forward, the path toward redemption. We tell you that redemption is not always big like the sea splitting. Sometimes it's so small that it is hard to notice. But what happens when redemption doesn't come? What happens when you have turned over every stone, have traveled all over the world, have pleaded with every leader, visited the White House, spoken to the Prime Minister and the President of Israel and the Pope and Elon Musk and the UN and on social media and on the brink of a deal where your child is to be released, still, he doesn't come home alive. Instead, he comes home to be buried at the age of 23. Yesterday was his 24th birthday. What then? What then is this unfulfilled redemption? What do you do when you dreamed about and agonized and worked for 329 days for something else? What do you do then? When you were the voice of hope, the prophet who used every channel to save innocent souls and it didn't work? On day 67, Rachel painted the portrait of the dream of redemption that she hoped for. Here's what she said. We can keep dividing the world into the paradigm of them versus us, or we can start thinking about those who are willing and those who are not willing. All over the world, we have got to learn to live together, or all over the world, we are going to die together. She said, I wrote a poem for a woman in Gaza. She knows who she is. It's called One Tiny Seed. There is a lullaby that says, your mother will cry 1,000 tears before you grow to be a man. I have cried 1,000,000 tears in the last 67 days. We all have. And I know that way over there, there's another woman who looks just like me, because we are all so very similar, and she has also been crying. All those tears, a sea of tears, they all taste the same. Can we take them, gather them up, remove the salt, and pour them over our desert of despair, and plant one tiny seed? A seed wrapped in fear, trauma, pain, war, and hope, and see what grows? Could it be that this woman, so very like me, that she and I could be sitting together in 50 years, laughing without teeth because we have drunk so much sweet tea together? And now we are so very old, and our faces are creased like worn-out brown paper bags, and our sons have their own grandchildren, and our sons have long lives, one of them without an arm. But who needs two arms anyway? Is it all a dream, a fantasy, a prophecy, one tiny seed? Sometimes redemption is unfulfilled. The son without the arm does not come home and live a long life. Sometimes the world does not turn out how we would have hoped and prayed and dreamed, and we have to face the daunting, torturous, painful reality of what is, rather than what we dreamed it could be. What is the Torah for this moment where we sit, mourning the loss of thousands, where we watch yet another war unfold in the north of Israel, where we cannot see beyond the fog and trauma of this war or take the next step, where these two women, one Israeli and one Palestinian, are still worlds apart? I want to be honest with you and say that I struggled with this part of the Torah for months, and I haven't figured it out. I'm going to give you what I came up with, but I find this to be the hardest Torah. In these moments, we have to speak our truths. We have to be afforded a space for despair and raw emotion, having a place to shout to the heavens that things should not look this way, that we need better leaders. And then we have to remember that we are not alone. It is no accident that immediately in the chaos and loss of after burying a loved one, we surround the mourner with community. Community is a place to find love and comfort, not answers. But through connection, we often can tap back into some kind of resilience. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but God willing, eventually. After Shiva, John and Rachel got up and committed to keep fighting to bring the hostages home and for a different future. How do we find that strength to turn towards hope? Today, our liturgy includes a piyut, a poem, which says, Hayom Harat Olam. Traditionally translated as today is the birthday of the world. I don't think that's a great translation. The Paitan, the poet, took this line originally from the 20th chapter of Jeremiah, where the prophet is in misery after trying to turn a wayward people away from idolatry and injustice, but to no avail. He's exhausted. By the 20th chapter, he is miserable. And he says, Lo, motatani merachem, utzihili imi kivri, verachamaharat olam. Because God did not kill me before birth, so that my mother might be my grave, and her womb pregnant with me for all time. Jeremiah says here that he is so miserable, that his task is so hard and unbearable that he wishes that his mother had been pregnant with him forever, never to have given birth at all. The phrase Harat Olam takes on the new meaning of perpetual darkness, being stuck in the womb and never emerging into new life. The image is so painful metaphorically and literally, stuck forever on the precipice of creation and never being birthed into the world. The scholar Sarah Friedland Ben Arza teaches that our Paitan, our poet, takes this verse from Jeremiah and flips its meaning to say that the world is actually birthing eternally, olam. Not, if only I had never been born, but instead, we are always in the process of forever being born. In other words, there are endless possibilities in our universe, and we have to be ready to meet the moment. I believe this image is going to be necessary as we make our way forward in this new reality we are living. And I believe we cannot give up on ending the war, on stopping the suffering on all sides, on this one tiny seed that Rachel Goldberg-Polin references. Wrapping that seed to grow means that we will have to make space for all the wreckage from this war. The loss, the torture, the sheer numbers of innocent children and civilians killed, a territory in Gaza in shambles, as well as a generation of American Jews, many of whom have decided not to come today because they feel fury about Israel's response to October 7th. I don't know what to do with that. But I know we're going to have to find a way to talk to each other, to move forward in this difficult reality we are living. The Coalition for the Future, as Rachel Goldberg-Polin teaches us, is a place where we learn to listen to each other, to hear the pain of the other, not simply but with complexity, care, and commitment, and to bind each other's wounds. A place where nothing is simple, a place where human life will be valued more than an ongoing story of war and hatred and torture, because in the end, we will realize that there was too much loss, too much sacrificed, and we will be ready as a people to try something different. Though we live here in America, our support in Israel will continually be needed for strength and encouragement, for reflecting back what we have learned so profoundly from this year. As Rachel has taught us, no matter what, we have to find gratitude. It is a source of connection and survival. Pain must be felt and heard and ritualized, and there must be a way forward even amidst unfulfilled redemption. It won't be simple, and it is not clear yet how, but our texts tell us again and again and again that we are birthed into this world with everlasting possibilities, and we have been given imagination as a tool, one of the most sacred tools of the human condition. We must use it and find a way forward. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so, and may all of our hostages come home alive. Amen. We now are going to hear from our incredible cantor, the Hineni prayer, the prayer that says, "Here I am, ready to lead this community in prayer."
Page 140. Hineni hani mimas, nirhash v'nivchad mipachad, yoshev tilot Yisrael. אבקש ממך